Hi, welcome to the Dreadful Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Watson, a 21-year-old third year at Bradford Uni, studying film and TV production, who loves to stick his nose into other people's lives, which is why I've set up this podcast. In the podcast, I'm going to be having conversations about 4 parts of my guests' lives. This is childhood, employment, education, and social life in general. During this, we're going to be sharing some fun and not so fun memories alongside some more embarrassing ones. However, we're going to be doing this lightheartedly, but on a more serious note, we will be talking about social issues like mental health and gender that have affected our lives, and I'm going to be comparing my life to my guests' lives. So I really hope you enjoy this first episode and the next 3 to come. Thanks so much. Joining me for today's episode is a close friend of mine, Mikey Kingsman, who's a film graduate of Liverpool Uni and a bartender from Yorkshire. So, hi Mike, how are you? Thanks for coming on.
I'm very well, thank you, mate. Very well, thank you for having me on for this session of Dreadful Therapy.
Yeah,
I'm very excited.
The debut episode. Yeah, well, I'm glad. So, I gave you a brief introduction there for our debut episode. Like I say, obviously we'd love to be in a studio. I think that'd be more fun and it would just look a bit better. But as of COVID and everything that's gone on, Zoom is a bit safer for everyone. And so, like I said, gave you a brief introduction there, but it didn't really give us an incredible insight into who you are. So, if you could give us a couple of, it's always a horrible question, but a couple of words to describe yourself to some possible listeners, what would they be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the first word, as we both very know well, would be extremely bold. Unfortunately, as we can see from under here, the hair department is not my strongest gene.
Could be worse. You could have my curtains.
I would take your curtains over my bold any day of the week, mate. But to be fair, I'm not too bold in the facial region, so I work with it. Second word, I think compassionate. I like to think I'm a pretty compassionate fella. He looks after, he kind of is kind to people, looks after them, and whenever they're needed, I'm always there.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I probably have to get motivated at the moment. I'm really motivated to get looking better, to progress in life, and just to become a better person, really. So
yeah, well, I'd say, Mike, you're already perfect, but no, they're brilliant. I tell you what, I couldn't answer that if I got asked that, and I definitely wouldn't be motivated. So that's great. And I'm really glad you didn't use the word funny. Not that I don't think you're funny, but it's very much a cliche when someone asks you, "Oh, what are you like?" and you go, "Oh, I'm really funny."
Until I joke on the spot, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and so, well, that's great. So it's good to have a little brief insight. And so now I'm going to ask about your childhood and going to ask about just some details and act as a therapist, a dreadful one at that. And obviously won't pry into anything too deeply, but we'll go for it. And so first off, often when I think of childhood, I think of a certain image in my head. And so for me, it's the last day of school. We'd always walk from our school to Bolton Abbey Priory, which is quite famous in our local area anyway. And we walk down to the river and spend the day there. And so what is your Kennedy video style memory of down by the lake with your family of like that standout memory that's just like, if you were to capture it and put it in a documentary about yourself, what is that for you?
I've got to say, playing as you well know, mate, playing for Oakley Juniors as we both did as a young age. It was just every Saturday getting up and having just some football to go and play was brilliant. And when my dad first took me when I was 5 or 6, it quickly became my first love. And I love football. Still is now my first love, as we can see by the 2 shirts in the background. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, no. Well, so for me, I mean, I started a bit later, so for me, I tried so many sports, and so I never had that one sport, but football is the one that's kind of stayed with me. So I did same Ilkley Juniors as you. So this is the club, it was Ilkley Juniors, and it was. I think I really enjoyed it. Very cold mornings, wet
Oh,
crazy
they were
mornings. But
grim. They were grim.
yeah, definitely. And so I guess, is there any little certain standout part of that maybe that really was like best memory of childhood?
I think we both know the one I'm going to mention. The
Certainly do.
the first goal I got for the Oakley Juniors when I was what? I think I was 15. So by that time I'd already been there for 10 years, I reckon, or something ridiculous
Yeah.
like that. A long time. Um, but no, because I was always, I was always an okay footballer. I never really stood out with the crowd, but I was always there. So I was always kind of used as a bit of a bench warmer because I was also an unfit child. Let's put it that way as well. Um, so I remember my first goal came from an associate of ours, Matt, who crossed it into me in the last minute for a little tap in, and I just tapped
Hmm.
it in, tucked it away against Beckwithshire. I believe the final score in that game was 9-1, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember it very well because I
I,
remember everyone was very happy and made me feel very
yeah.
happy about myself.
Yeah, no, well, I remember absolutely iconic moment. I was heading out training. I was in the car, just the pitch, looking over the pitch. The road kind of came alongside it. Seeing parents running up and down, the coaches running up and down. I saw the ball play across the air. You put it in, and it was a great moment. I never quite had any moments like that, but no, that's great. And so, I guess if you compare it to the television childhood, like I said, like Kennedy style thing of the kids at the lake, or like, I don't know, anything you've seen on television that kind of shows childhood. Um, like what how would you compare it?
I'd say it was pretty normal, just kind of went to school from 4 till well, when I left IGS at 16, so it was kind of a
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
normal life.
yeah,
Lived in a semi-detached house on Wheatley Road in Oakley, and then moved when life well we moved and
yeah,
life just went on, mate. It was pretty normal, to be honest with you. It was
yeah,
pretty normal.
yeah. Do you think that you'd have liked like, is there any certain type of childhood you might have liked that you, if of like that you've seen on TV or anything like that, or is it, or if you are you content with what you've got?
I was pretty chuffed with mine, to be fair, mate. I had a
Well,
pretty reasonable upbringing.
well, that was perfect. And so, next question is, I think, was there any moment you had where you really felt like you transitioned from childhood to like adulthood, or just like losing some type of innocence, or just something different that kind of made you feel a bit older?
I think it was, if you remember at grammar school, Rob, they used to give comments out, if you remember, in the planners. So
Yeah.
I remember it was when I got my first behaviour comment for bad behaviour, and
Oh,
I had to go and
classic Mike.
because if you remember at the end of the week, your parent had to sign your planner.
Hmm.
So I remember when I went and showed my dad, I got a behaviour comment. He was certainly not happy
Hmm.
with me.
Yeah.
Because in primary school, you can get away with whatever you wanted. You get a little slap on the wrist, and then you get told to go and sit
Yeah.
back down, and you'll be fine. Not IGS, mate. Step up. It was a step up.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I suppose that's that. I think I was very much the same. It's like there'll be loads of people who get loads of behaviour comments or whatever, which were basically just little written warnings if you messed about in class or whatever, for anyone watching. But I think I think I was very much the same of where the first one I was like, oh my god, like I've never actually properly got told off and had to go home and tell my parents or show them. And I think I used to remember forging their signatures.
Oh,
Uh,
I did that plenty of times.
yeah, well, let's just not show our parents this. And so, no, fair enough. And so this kind of might overlap with the other question about the best memory. But what, I guess I was going to ask what's your best and worst, but what I'll just ask what's your worst, because we've got a good memory there for you. So, or not necessarily worst, just one that you didn't, not look on badly, but just that you remember like thinking like, oh, it's a lot to deal with, or something like that.
If I was going to say this, the state of the obvious one is probably the parents' divorce. That's always a pretty traditional, kind of stereotypical, tricky one to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
No, I imagine.
if you want a specific memory, it was when I was lying on my bed when I was about 10 or 11, and my dad came in and was like, "Son, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be living here anymore. I've got to go away for a couple of days." And when he broke down, I broke down as well.
Yeah.
So it was pretty tricky, that one to deal with. It's pretty
Yeah.
tricky.
No, yeah, I totally imagine. I mean, I've been lucky enough not to have to have dealt with anything like that, but or similar to that. But I imagine that was like really, really, really tough. I guess from that, obviously, to move on to a bit of a lighter note. I mean, thanks for sharing.
No problem.
But and like I said, I've never had. I could never be like, oh no, I know exactly what it's like because I haven't had the same situation, and even if I had, it still wouldn't be the same. But so it's one of those ones of just like you said, it's like kind of it feels like cliche, but I guess it's not because it's an individual thing for everyone.
Mm.
But to move away from that, onto school, on the education part of the podcast, um, we both went to the same secondary school, but this can apply to secondary school or primary school or university or college, I believe. And so, um, would you say you liked school?
I've got to be honest with you. I think primary school was fine because I don't have much memories of it really.
Yeah,
IGS, apart from the social aspect of it, I really did not enjoy it at all. The learning was hard, especially because what I found with especially with secondary school where we both went was I always found the teachers would always pander towards the smarter kids, and I was never really a natural academic anyway.
yeah,
So I found it a
I
bit
know
trickier than
exactly what you
some
mean.
people did. So, but then college came around, and I think I found my thing. I loved media. I loved like the script writings, the directing side of it, even the camera side. It was all fantastic. It was almost like an awakening to something that I really enjoyed doing.
Yeah,
And then
no,
uni came around, and uni was an absolute blast. So it was
yeah.
fantastic.
Well, I know from a few memories that you enjoyed that, but no, it's similar for me. School is just one of those things of some really good memories, but I think there was one or two that stuck out as I guess more harder to deal with. And like, I definitely know what you mean by the whole academic side of things, of
Mm,
where I was very much I was put into a lot of the bottom sets, and so I feel like very much once they've done that, it kind of you very much feel like there's a bit of a bit of a barrier in the way of where teachers aren't particularly trying as hard. Um, but apart from that, so you mentioned you enjoyed the social aspects of it.
mm.
Like, what friend group would you have put yourself in? When you like when I say that, I mean obviously for parts of it we were in the same friend group. But
Mm.
what would it be? Popular? Would it be? I guess just the stereotypical
Definitely
one.
not popular. No chance. I was one of the cool kids. I was literally a human bowling ball with a wig on when I was in year eight. So I certainly had no chance of being popular. I literally think. I literally think I was kind of just middle of the road. I wasn't. Well, I don't think I was terrifically unpopular. I wasn't really popular. I was kind of just flirting about. And then, like you say, our friend group. I wouldn't really say we were the cool kids by any stretch of the imagination, knowing some of
No,
them. Um,
no,
but we all got on like an house on fire. So it was that was how I describe our friend group. We all just got on and
yeah,
clicked. So it was brilliant fun.
yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, for me, it's like I drifted in and out of the groups. I think I was very much a bit different than you. Am I right in saying in that group you've pretty much been in it just since the start of secondary school,
Yeah, I
maybe,
think
or
yeah.
around then?
Well, I knew a couple of lads from
Yeah,
like from primary school and even before that. But then like properly, we all like started really hanging out in
yeah,
about year seven, and then we
yeah,
kind of just stuck since really.
yeah. I suppose like for me, like in comparison, mine was just like I very much drifted. I was very much. I think our like the group we're in now. So me, you, and quite a few others. He's been the only group I've kind of consistently been there. There's lots I've drifted in and out of, but like I've consistently been in and around it. Never been like a big part of it, like because I've been drifting in and out. But yeah, it has been great. And so, what would be your best memory of school, and what would be your worst?
Ooh, good question. That's a good question.
Primary,
Um,
primary or secondary, whichever you like. Or in fact, I'm going to extend that to education: primary, secondary, college,
I've got
or
to be fair,
university.
I've got some great memories of everything really. Do I have to pick one? Because I've got
Um,
I've got a couple. But
Just give us a couple, and we can explore any
I
ones
can
we
I
want.
can I certainly remember the end of school parties we went to. Like it was when we finished like if you remember, mate, like do you remember the year 10, year 11 socials in the park and stuff like that,
Yeah.
late on after dark and stuff like that. They were always fun.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I've heard certain things about that, Mike, with
yeah,
including you, where rather, I think, I suppose there's a lot of uncomfortable pressure around drinking and things like that
mm,
pre, pre the age that you should. And I
yeah,
know that once you were there and somebody was asking you what you were having to drink, and everyone else
yeah.
was there, with the first drinks ever, or a couple of the first. And
I was trying to talk about the good
what was
memories,
it
mate,
you
not
had?
not the worst memories.
Yeah.
I,
Oh, well, so tell us about that then. If that's a standout bad one.
it was well, just because I was so innocent, I didn't understand what was wrong with me drinking my Lucasade Sports guava
Ah,
at
oh wow,
the park
especially.
socials. So I was quite happy, quite content drinking my Lucasade Sport, not realizing everyone else was on alcohol at the time.
Yeah,
And I remember particularly last week birthday, I came up to me and was like, "Oh, what are you drinking, Mikey? What are you drinking?" I was there like Lucasade.
yeah,
And I think she was probably thinking I was drinking something a bit more than that because she kept saying, "No,
yeah.
really, what are you drinking?" I was like, "What's wrong with me, Lucasade Sport? I'm drinking my
So,
Lucasade Sport."
yeah,
And she kind of just, I don't really know, from memory, she kind of just got was like, oh, right, cool, and just walked
fair,
off.
yeah,
Um, but I cannot deny that is a pretty harrowing one in my head.
yeah. Just like an embarrassing one of where you're like, oh god, I wish I'd have just said something else.
I just wish I said
Especially because,
something normal. Yeah, just like a
yeah,
normal kind of response to that, which it probably was, but just so uncool. It was just so
yeah.
yeah.
No, I feel like for me, I mean, I had a few embarrassing ones, but it's more from like everyone else of where it's like having a bit too much drink, or like the first time of where
Mm.
I remember I had it and I was the only one who got drunk because I was just such a massive lightweight. And so I still to this day, same thing. Not that I get drunk a lot, but yeah. And so um I'll go into often around university, such like big hype with it,
Mm.
such it's like meant to be the best time of your life. And it's meant to be like obviously you've only just got out of it, only just graduated this year, but well, congratulations. But
Thank you.
well, what would you say it lived up to the hype of that best time of your life? Obviously, so far that you can know of.
From yeah, I think it varies really. First year is just one of the best years you will ever experience ever because you go there. Well, especially for me, from my experience anyway, I went there with one of our mates, Alex, and we went and had an absolute blinder of a time for the first year. It was a lot of partying, a lot of socials, just a good
Hmm.
time. And to be honest with you, the work, I don't mind saying this now, the work in the first year was a breeze. It was just you had to pass it, and that was it. It didn't count towards your
Yeah,
second and third year. So it was
yeah,
literally just get. To be honest with you, it was getting drunk and going into uni late, and then doing the work to the
yeah.
minimum quality, and then just getting on. Second year was also really fun because it was only for our course. It was I think it was a 45% of the overall marks. It was a bit more intense, but
Hmm.
still was room to have enough of a laugh.
Yeah,
Third year gets a bit different because that's when that for me
yeah,
for our course that's when it all counted. So
yeah.
like doing the dissertation, I've never put more hours into a piece of work than my dissertation or
No,
the
definitely.
our final documentary we did. It
I
was
think
all
the
a bit.
GCSEs got a bit less attention than the dissertation, I imagine.
Oh, certainly. I think I only got five GCSEs and they were all at C.
Oh,
So yeah, it was. They got absolutely zero attention. I think I played more time
yeah.
playing FIFA back then than I did my revision.
Oh,
So
well, I'm sure you're probably playing me, distracting me as well.
probably, mate,
Um,
probably.
and so, I mean, I'm nervous to ask this because I imagine I never know people from my university or maybe even lecturers might watch this or hear this. But would you say university was worth the money? It's a bit of a
Oh,
contentious question because it's a lot of money, and I think
it is a
that's
lot.
that's often spoke about. And so, do you reckon it was worth it?
For me, just for the social aspect and being able to, as my parents say, you're leaving the nest, aren't you? So you're going
Yeah.
from the house to your own flat almost. For that side of it was brilliant. Your development, your social development, your growing up, it was fantastic. I mean, I don't know how you feel with being doing your third year, like I did the end of my third year in a pandemic. It was pretty horrid, but
Yeah.
um, overall, I'd say yes, just because you meet new people. I've got some brilliant course mates who I wouldn't have met if I didn't go, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
it was all quality, all a great good time. So I can't complain at all that much. No, I think it was I think it was worth it, definitely.
Okay. Oh, well, that's brilliant. It's good to hear because I know a lot of people don't feel the same. I'm not saying that's me, but I'd say because it's a lot of money, and I went to uni for different reasons of where there was the social aspect, but I wasn't living away, so that was a bit different. And so I guess I'd still say it was worth it and is worth
Mm.
it. But I'm only partway through now. I'm in third year. So, but yeah, no, definitely. Well, it's good to hear that you feel like you have got your money's worth.
I had a
And
great
so,
time.
if you could go back and change any of it, like any of your education, primary, secondary, or uni, college, whatever, if you could go back and change any part of it or change something about yourself that you could, if you could go back to that Mikey at the time and be like here you go, or just something like that,
Yeah.
what would it be?
If I was to be brutally honest with you, I feel like I go back to when I first started uni, as I didn't have any confidence in myself. I was a very big fella. Um, and I kind of wish I told myself now, because now, well, as you know, being a mate of mine, I'm on a bit of a weight loss grind at the minute.
Yeah, it's been incredibly impressive, I must say. I've
Oh,
kept up with the Instagram update, and obviously I've been walking with you most days, as that's the only thing we can do at the
well,
moment.
exactly. But so if I could go back to tell myself in my first year, it is doable. Because I remember at the
mhm,
time, when at the time I felt like it was just there was no point. I was always going to be a big chap who had no confidence in himself. I kind of just wish I could go up and tell myself, you can do it.
mhm.
Go for it.
Yeah, go
That's
for
what I
it.
kind of
Yeah,
wish.
yeah. So I imagine a lot of it, like you say, it's just that like you were willing to do it, but you just maybe didn't have the confidence that you could, and so you just didn't.
Yeah,
You left it and left it. But I mean, obviously, you've said to me, this is your words, but just that you're partway through your journey yet. But it's like I suppose it's not even about how anyone looks or anything like that, because all of like I suppose weight issues at either end are a really difficult
mm,
subject, and I wouldn't want to speak on them because I haven't experienced like either side of it, and so, but I think it sounds like you're on your way, and you're more than I've noticed. Very much more confident, more everything, and
absolutely.
so I suppose it's that focusing on how you feel rather than how you actually appear, and I
Yeah,
think that's great.
I think it's certainly about self love. It's learning to kind of go, this is what I was, this is how I lived, this is how I need to change it. And then when you do change it, you hear all this positive feedback. It's
Yeah,
brilliant. It's fantastic. There's no other way to
yeah,
describe it. It's brilliant. It's fantastic.
yeah. And I guess there'll become a point, and of a lot of it, of where like that you part of knowing that you could do it, even if nothing changed from now, is just knowing that like I guess is that believing in yourself anyway, regardless of what it looks like or what it is, of just that you're trying or that you're doing something, or even if you're not trying, just that I like you say, just the self love thing to just keep going and just
Mm.
enjoy it. I guess is the best thing, and that's probably the best way to go about it, I imagine.
Yeah, I can't lie. The thought of it before I started doing it was pretty horrid. You know, having to cut out some of my favourite foods, um, and all that. It was pretty horrid to start with.
Yeah.
But once you got into the routine of starting to do your exercise,
Hmm.
you're eating better. You learn to love it. I think because you
Yeah.
learn to that. I'm learning how to just to look, because if you don't put the hard work in, you're never going to see the results, are you? So that's what I try and
Yeah.
tell myself. But it's been a pretty successful journey so far.
Yeah. And so it's like with me, I guess I got into the gym for a bit for different reasons, and I mean you're able to tell, but I think like you say, it's the you really start to love it, and you really start to like
You do.
just the feeling afterwards of just like getting back. I mean, I know we got back from a big walk the other day, of where we walked quite away and we didn't know where we were going, and Mike was just in a single jumper and it was pouring it down.
It was horrid.
It was just horrible on the ball, and I don't think anyone was enjoying it. And we got back, but it's just that nice feeling of I've done it, I've enjoyed it. Now looking back at it, even if you hate it at the time, you tend to. They're I guess the times that you tend to think, oh, I'm happy I did that. Like that sense of achievement.
It was the fact that you had boots on and you were walking through mud like it was no problem, and I was skidding all over the place like I was on ice. It was pretty traumatic, I must say.
Yeah, you were getting the Air Maxes, not the Air Maxes, the
They are
Air Force
Nike Air
Ones.
Max. Oh, they are. But anyway,
Well,
my trainers were ruined at the minute.
yeah, muddy trainers. But
Very.
I guess moving on now, the employment section. So more than halfway now. The employment section. Just give us a little list, a CV of all your jobs. That you've had.
Right. So I started at 17. I was a pot wash / kind of kitchen man at one of our local pubs, Friends of Ham in Oakley. Also as a training Leeds. So I don't know how many of you might know that, but there you go. I started that when I was 16, 17, and I can't lie, I was terrible at that job. I did it purely to make money. I didn't enjoy it at all. I don't think my bosses liked me either. As when I tried to apply back, no chance. I didn't really get a look in. My second job after that was working for my auntie at her own business in Oakley called Clip and Climb, which is where you kind of basically I was a clipper. So let's say a party of 12 came in, you just clip the people on, let them climb and unclip them and clip the next person. It was quite a routine
That's quite
job.
good. To be fair, that's quite a cool job. That
It was okay. It was decent enough.
A change from pot washing, I imagine.
Oh,
Bit of high risk, high reward.
I can't lie. There was one time I remember when a lady just climbed up the wall with no harness on, and I kind of looked at her and think, "What are you doing?" And she came back down. But I remember for that minute I was there like, "What do you do? What do I do? What happened
like
if you
what's
fall?"
happening? No,
that was pretty stressful.
Those moments of where you let it slip are horrible. I mean, I think I've had that. I worked at Tesco for a bit, and remember there was a big delivery of wine on the back of the truck, and you'd pull it out onto the bit that lowers down with a big like pump truck thing, and I was doing it with a manager, and we were moving it, and it just tumbled like a building falling down, and it was just wine everywhere in the yard, and it's just one of those moments of where it's just like I just wish like you just think, oh, I just love to just dissolve into the air and not be here.
Yeah, I've had a couple of them. But
And
then
so,
after, I was
go on.
just going to say, and then after that, I went to my current job at Bar Tat in Oakley. Lovely place to work. I've enjoyed every single day there. It's been brilliant. And then for a brief period in COVID, I worked at Tesco, like yourself, down at the Tesco Express, which I didn't. I'm not going to lie, didn't really enjoy that one. Really, the pay was all right, but
I think that was my same experience. When I went there.
In my opinion, they did look after the staff very well, and that's what I will say about it. Especially when we were in the middle of a pandemic and we had no protection whatsoever. So interesting. That's to say the least. Interesting.
No, it's definitely a weird one. I mean, I was lucky enough not to work there during the whole pandemic thing. I mean, I couldn't have, but no, it's weird. I was definitely very relieved when I moved on to jobs.
I loved going from working in a precious environment and going back to the pub where you're with friends who you work with colleagues you've bonded with. It is night and day. It is brilliant.
Yeah, no, and so from all of those jobs, quite a wide array, a bit of a mix, but some classics for people our age. What's your most? I'm just gonna go for it. Embarrassing or crazy memory of work? Something that you wouldn't believe that. Or just something embarrassing, just a good story to share.
I've got two I can really think of the top of my head. The first one was when I first went to Friends of Ham, like I said. So the area where we did food preparation, I don't know if you've ever been in, Rob. It's on the right hand side as you go in, so you are in front of the public. You're to view the public.
Yeah.
And I remember some old woman kept coming up and asking if her bread was ready because you could order bread with an olive dip, and she kept coming up and asking if her bread was ready. And it was a busy day. We had a lot of checks on. I remember just thinking, please, madam, please don't sit down. Your bread is ready soon. I kept repeating this to her. And eventually she came up to me once, and I just snapped her and said, "Madam, go and sit down. Your bread will be ready when it's ready, okay?" And I remember just thinking, and the bollock, and I go, "Oh, that was ridiculous."
Yeah,
To be
it's one of
fair,
those
not
things with
surprisingly at all.
yeah, one of those things with customer service is like obviously when somebody's like nagging, it's like oh, customer's always right, everything like that. But
Yeah.
there are certain days, like with everyone, whether it's in an office or something like that, certain days where you have an off day and you just like go away. And so like I had a thing with um I've had a thing with a couple of customers of where once somebody came up to the till and it was a 1:10 and it was getting close to 10 o'clock and I was on the checkout. I was absolutely dead and the lights in Tesco they just made me feel sleepy and I was just there like head down, literally like this. And somebody came up to the till and went like I think this just said something just like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" And I was just like, "Oh no, absolutely fine. Just a bit tired coming to the end of my shift." And they were just like, "You shouldn't be like that." And I was like,
Oh.
um, and obviously that's true. I should have been up. I should have been, but it's one of those things. I'm just like, oh, just let me off. And it was just one of those moments of just like the customer service. And I had once somebody having a go at me for losing an Easter egg, um, even though. So I'd looked for it for half an hour, far and wide. I'd looked for the Tesco Express store down the road, see if they had it, and I couldn't find it. And then so he goes to another colleague and asks, not believing that I've looked, even though I was. Um, and he asks, and they go straight away, taking to them, and he'd hidden them for himself to buy later. Um, but he was just like, "Oh, the customer wants them, so I'll give them." And he'd hidden them right at the back of this massive wall of Easter eggs, like. And I'd pulled it apart, and like the big
Oh,
towers,
mate.
like really high in the warehouse. And I remember the guy came up to me, and he was just like, "Why didn't you look?" And I was like, I did look. I did look. I'm really sorry. I must have just missed it." And then he drags me in front of my manager and he goes, "He didn't do his job. You should have a word." And I just remember seeing my colleague in the background with the biggest smile on his face, knowing that he'd hidden them. And I was just like, "Oh my God, this is the worst situation."
Oh.
And ever since he was a regular and he'd come in and I hated it. I'd just see him every time and I'd just be like, "I can't believe it."
To be fair, mate, I think everyone has those sort of memories with customers, especially. I mean, to be fair, again, it was my fault. I didn't snap at anyone this time. This is a completely new story of when the pub reopened for the first time in July. We
Mm-hmm.
had to get used to using trays because we couldn't grab the pints and take it to the table because
Yeah.
contaminating and all this. And so I had to learn to hold a tray. You have to hold your tray like that,
Uh-huh.
and then you put your drinks on, and it's really hard. So I had to practice doing this.
Yeah.
And I remember that there was one table, and it was a guy who was wearing. He was talking to his mates, kind of boasting really about this new shirt he bought, and he had his
Mm-hmm.
iPhone laying on the table with his two mates and him. And I came over, put the tray down because they were tall wheat beer glasses, start wobbling,
Yeah.
and I go, "Oh no, I
Oh.
know what's happening here." Everywhere, all over his new shirt, all over his new iPhone. I remember panicking, going, "Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry." And
Oh.
luckily, he was annoyed at first, but he was pretty respectable towards me. He's like, "Oh, dear me." I was like, "Yeah, I'm so sorry." And I went and got him replacement beers, tried to give him some blue roll. It was a pretty embarrassing experience, to be fair. The worst, however, is spilling red wine on someone. That's really interesting as
Yeah.
well.
Just a bit of a
Getting
nag.
that over someone's jeans was another
Yeah.
experience which is one to forget. Yeah.
No, I had a I had a physics teacher. I won't name names, but once he returned everyone's tests with red wine,
Oh,
absolutely covering all of them. He'd obviously been drinking while he's had his been marking,
definitely a
and I
fountain
had
job.
no, it wasn't
Was it?
actually.
Was it not?
It was Mr. Myers.
Oh,
It was
to be
just
fair,
a
he
bit
was
of a
alright.
mess.
He was quite nice, to be
He
fair,
was
was he?
nice. He was
Yeah.
lovely, but he was just. I think he was just a bit like. I think he was busy at that point in time, and he handed them back, and I had like 7 marks missing. Like when he counted it up, and I was like, "Oh my God, he must have been absolutely smashed when he did it." But and so you mentioned you had 2 memories.
Yeah.
What was there another?
It was kind of just those three I kind of just
Yeah,
spewed out really. Just it kind of the first one was embarrassing for me because it was my first experience of being told by my manager, "Listen, the customer's always right. You never do that again.
yeah,
Otherwise you're gone." I was like, "Yeah, terribly sorry, I accept that."
yeah.
So that kind of taught me to that taught me to be really remain calm at all times.
Yeah.
I've just thought of a memory if you want to hear one now. Down when I was at
Yeah, go
Tesco.
away.
it was the bank holiday in May, and I remember
Mhm.
there was one fella who I don't mind saying this was absolutely paralytical. He was he
Oh,
was he was very he had a lot to drink. I always say that,
yeah.
and
I was,
and I remember it was my job behind the till to serve to take his payments for what he's bought, and he bought a load of beer.
yeah.
And I knew it was going to be interesting when he had a go at one of our older colleagues named I can't remember his name, but I'll leave him nameless. And he had a go at this
Yeah.
colleague about like saying, "Listen, why are you letting me in?" Swearing at him, being really unreasonable. And eventually he just powered his way into the shop, with
Mhm.
just completely. There was no point trying to fight him. He was motivated. And then he
Mhm.
came to my till. I had to take his payment for his thing, and his car got declined. And I remember thinking, how am I going to tell this man who is on a rampage at
Yeah.
the minute he has to pay again?
It is that.
So I go,
Yeah.
sir, I'm terribly sorry, your card's been declined. Then he goes, you effing what? And he started swearing. I was like, oh
Uh,
my goodness me. So he started swearing
uh,
at me, and I started panicking. And then he said, I'm gonna effing kill someone in a minute. I was like, please just work card. And
yeah.
luckily the second time round it worked, and
Uh,
thank goodness for that.
no, I always use
Yeah.
the classic. Oh, it's the machine. It's always playing up. That's usually a way to get out of that. But
It was never my fault. It was never my fault. It was
yeah,
always the card machine.
yeah. No, and I remember once. I remember once going down, seeing somebody empty a load of like spirits, big Jack Daniels bottles into a trolley. He goes, and he's under the influence, and he
Yeah.
goes down and he pushes it down the main corridor past the tills, and the security guard, as he's about to leave the door, grabs the front of the trolley, and then the guy pulls it away and then rams it back into him. And once there's something about Tesco security guards. Once if the person shows violence, they just have to leave them. They're just meant to be a deterrent. Like they can stop them, but as soon as they do anything bad, unless it's causing harm to someone else, then I think they step in. But they were just stealing it, and there was something. I think he stole like 300 quid plus of alcohol, and he
Fucking
just took
hell.
it out with a trolley. But then he took the trolley, of course, to the top of the thing, and the trolley stopped with the brakes, and he couldn't get it any further. And so he stole it, and so I remember that was something crazy. But I guess to finish off this little section,
Yeah, of course.
time in mind. Dream job, have you got one?
Ooh. Are we going really unrealistic or really realistic? Because
Whichever you like. You don't need whichever
oh,
you
good
like.
question. I'd like to go into. I think I'd like to go realistic. I'd like to go into uni lecturing. I think one day. I think I'd like to give a go at uni teaching, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'd specialise in, but being a uni lecturer would be a nice job. I've always thought,
Oh,
and then
well,
if we're going really dream directing a film would be brilliant.
yeah. Well, I know we have similar interests, but I'm sure I think you'd be a great uni lecturer. I mean, um, I've had some good ones in my time, but so yeah, and so moving on to um, the next and final section,
Yeah, of course.
social life and relationships. I've put this just friendships, relationships,
Yeah, of
just
course.
general social life. Um, so anything outside of school, or whatever. And so I want to kind of go in the same vein as the previous things, but I kind of want to look at like I guess the more serious parts of stuff, and like you hear a lot of the time like crazy statistics like men account for um 3/4 of suicide deaths that are
Mm.
registered, and this was in 2019, and they um made up out of 5,691 deaths. Obviously, horrible to give it as numbers, but that 4,303 were as males, and we're obviously both males. So I guess it'd be nice to, I guess not necessarily talk about suicide in relation, just mental health, things like that. And so, with all the recent lockdown and everything, is there anything with social life? And obviously, I know we've been going on a lot. That's like you've learned about yourself in terms of socializing and how much whether you rely on it if, at all, because I
Yeah.
know from experience I can really speak from experience that I need that social interaction. Like I can't not have it. I have to see somebody every day, obviously within the rules, a walk or whatever. And so is there anything you've learned about yourself that you kind of like it took a little bit of time through the whole lockdown situation?
Well, I know. Well, I'm sure you know this. Being close to me, I suffer with anxiety, unfortunately. So every day I have to, like I say, socializing was big. I missed just that bit. It's also you miss the freedom of being able to do what you wanted to do, if you know what I mean. Like
Hmm.
I was even thinking about this the other day. One of the things I really missed was a drinks night out where you go to
Yeah.
the pub with a couple of mates and you have a laugh and you
Let
just have a
go,
nice
kind
catch up
of.
and let go. Yeah, there's no And in lockdown, I really missed that. Um, the Zoom calls were great and all, but I think that
Yeah.
your mind's very smart about differentiating
Yeah.
reality to.
And you know that, like, as soon as you press, like, stop the call, you're straight to sleep anyway, or something like that if it's going
Yeah,
on late. So, yeah. And, like, so I really felt like, I don't know, I'm very much relied on it. And I know we've pretty much been on walks most days. And
I
so
think it's been
we've kind of
every
had
single
that.
day apart from one this month.
Yeah, yeah, and so I think it's been nice though,
That's
and I
brilliant.
think it's probably something we'll probably carry on more as an
Hundred
option
percent.
to go for a walk. But I think it's very much we do talk about. It'd be nice to stop at a pub on the way, not necessarily
Yeah,
for the drink, but just that like we often get a coffee from a takeout place, but it's like
it's definitely a
I don't
beer
want to
I'm going
sit
for.
down. Yeah, well there we go. It's a pub bartender. What do you expect? And so along the same tangent, do you feel like with it obviously you're getting support from other people, whether obviously it doesn't come necessarily in the form of support when it's just socializing, but would you say you feel like you get enough support from those around you?
In
um
regards to my mental
just so
health
like
or in general.
just well whatever, just any issues you're having, so with me, like I feel like I have my support network of my family, my girlfriend, obviously my friends, and so and my therapist, and so I've obviously gone external for that, and I've kind of reached out for that, and that's been
Mm.
an amazing thing for me. But is there like I guess do you feel like you get enough support because of that horrible statistic, which is obviously, like I said,
Yeah,
putting suicide in numbers is a horrific thing. It's like the whole coronavirus thing. When people are just reading numbers, it's very easy day to day to just be like, oh yeah, okay, like that's that. But is do you feel like you have that support, or uh like because I know with men it's often not there.
to be fair, I feel like I've got a pretty decent support bubble. To be fair, when it comes to that sort of stuff. My dad he before I got my help from like I did with you, mate. I went to a therapist and was the best thing I ever did for myself because they teach you how to deal with it when you feel
Yeah,
like an anxiety coming on. Having my dad there because he was the guy who whenever I needed him I'd call, and if he answered he just calmed me down straight away. There was no
yeah,
issue. He'd just go, you're fine, mate. Deep breaths, and eventually it would go away. This stress. My
yeah,
stepmom has been brilliant as well. She's fantastic at calming me down as well and just rationalising it. My friends, yourself, mate, like everyone has been really supportive whenever I've needed them to be. So I can't really complain
yeah.
too much about that. Really, I feel like I've done pretty well in regards to that.
No, oh well, that is absolutely brilliant. I mean, so I guess there is that scary thing of with friends, and like you say, I I, I feel like I don't know. Would you like the support sometimes to come in a different form? Because I know a lot of the time I can only speak for support we give each other. I know that once we've talked about it, we'll just have the general chats of like, oh yeah, no, I've had that. That's kind of what it's like for me, or whatever. And that I find that really helpful when we've had those discussions. And
Mm.
um, obviously that takes a different form in like therapy or with your parents. But would you ever want it in a different form? Is there anything you think like, oh, if people did that, that would be brilliant, or like,
To be fair, one of the ways I've always helped dealing with it is just by talking about it. For me,
yeah,
I mean, that's why I thought a therapist was so helpful because there's no judgment there.
yeah,
It could be the most stupid thing in the world, or it could be a horrid
yeah,
thing, and they'd listen and they'd talk you through it. And I thought it was one of the best things I've ever had.
yeah,
I
no,
can't deny one of the things I do miss, like I say, with all this is I was always able to put it away when I was able to go out with my mates. So whenever we
yeah,
go to the pub or something, the worry goes, if you know what I mean, the worry is back of your head because
yeah,
you're talking to people, you have in other distractions. So that's kind of the way
yeah.
I dealt with it, really.
No, oh well, oh that's brilliant. And so I kind of feel the same in the way that it's having that is great. And so, do you think? Obviously, I'll avoid in this podcast, and we'll do it in future podcasts, talking
Mm.
about the problems women face with this type of thing, because obviously we're not very well qualified to talk about that, both as men. But so just focusing on the issue of men, do you feel as a man that you get less chance to talk about it, or do you feel like that's more of a generational thing of maybe like the generation before you kind of had that hardened thing? Because I feel personally that our generation has kind of really been, there's been a big huge push to
Oh,
share, and it's still
absolutely.
terrifying and a bit scary. But like, what do you think about that?
I think I think it's been a really big step up for my generation to help those people. I often sympathise with the people who grew up, let's say they were our age back in the, I don't know, let's say the 60s, for example, who,
Mm,
if they had anxiety, they were told to, well, in some people's words, they were told to man up.
yeah,
And I thought that was just I thought, I can't imagine how hard that must have been for some people
yeah,
to deal with. And unfortunately, it's probably led them down some unfortunate paths in life. And I think being a bloke, it's one of the at the moment with everyone being so supportive of it, it's brilliant to speak about it. And I think I'm glad. I'm pretty proud of people for when they do say this is how I feel. It's pretty crap. So
yeah.
and I
Well,
think and I think and I'm sorry, mate. My personal experience is I think it's pretty easy to speak about it. To be honest with you.
yeah, yeah. And so I'm sure some people, it's that, I think it's that first step of the speaking about it to someone is like, I imagine back then when people would have their man up, and obviously that will still exist. It'll still exist in some houses, some families of where that is the attitude because it's so drilled into them. And I know, uh, and I know for a fact with my family that, and I know my dad's dad was very much like that, but obviously my
Mm.
dad's totally different to that, and I've been so lucky that there has been, I guess, that change and that help. And so yeah, um I think also that there's definitely been like the stereotype of, and tell me what you think of this, of that, like, oh, men don't share these things, and like, oh, not sensitive. It's kind of like pretty much almost there. Obviously it's never close enough. I mean, the statistics show it's still not equal in terms of that stuff, but I think it has been a, like you say, big step. And I know definitely with all of it, it's been sharing it. For me, it was like a bittersweet thing of like sharing it. It identifies it and it legitimizes it, and you're like, oh, I'm not the only one. But there
No,
is
exactly.
that I think there is the reason people don't like doing it is there is that scary thing of I'm admitting this is me, and so no, well, it's great to hear that. And so I guess to move on and just to finish off
Hmm.
on a lighter note, your social life, so that going out that you mentioned, the stuff you enjoyed,
Yeah.
obviously you didn't get much of a chance to speak about those really great bits, but we obviously had that in the other sections. Three words about your social life that you'd describe it. So friends groups, whether it's family, friends, whatever, how would you describe it in those words, just so far as well, because obviously I haven't got that far in life yet.
I suppose if we're talking about a friends gathering, it's always just joy and happiness
Yeah,
because you go there for a specific reason, and that's to chat with your mates. So you have it. I've always said our first big party we're going to have when this all ends is going to be brilliant because
yeah,
we're all going to be very much enjoying ourselves.
yeah.
Um, and the
I
freedom
think
of
for
it.
me, I'm not obviously, I'm not always the one to be going out, but I think I'm very much definitely going to be there.
Yeah.
I've like really got excited for it, and so yeah, and so another couple of words. So you got joy. I think that's an
I'd say
amazing thing to
yeah.
have.
I'd say joy when I'm with my friends. Family families again kind of when it comes to social life for me, it's all
Mm,
positive. It's all positive for me. I love
yeah,
it. It's part of the job I do. Um,
yeah.
can't think
I
of other
suppose it
words.
really ties. No, I suppose it really ties into like your employment as well. I mean,
Mm.
part of the social life is when you go to a pub. I mean, I know a lot of because of your job, a lot of your life will kind of be in and around that is that joy is what you want to see when you go there. And so I think that's great. I mean, don't have to push you for more. If that's the word you really think, you know what, spot on, that's what it is, then
Yeah,
we'll leave it
I'd
at that.
certainly say it's joyous. It's always a good time when you get to go and see people you're not seeing for ages. So yeah, definitely joyous.
Well, so I guess now is the end of the podcast. You'll all be relieved to know. So thanks for joining me, Mike. It's
No,
been
no problem
absolutely
at all.
brilliant. I really hope people have enjoyed hearing stories as I know I've been in a couple of them, and I've enjoyed living them, and I've definitely enjoyed hearing them too. So
Yeah,
it's been great having you.
yeah. Thank you for
So
having
I
me on,
hope you've
mate.
enjoyed. No, well, no worries. My pleasure to have you on. You can find our next episode just basically on any podcasting platform you could possibly think of, on YouTube, and it will also be on any Instagram, social media sites, or YouTube to see some highlights. So I hope to see you there, and goodbye.